Hello friends, it's Mal with Made by Manny and Mal. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a super spooky Witch's Brew tumbler. We're going to add some glow-in-the-dark 3D drips and really make this a whimsical, fun Halloween cup. I really hope you enjoy it. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for new videos every single Tuesday and Saturday. Every single thing I'm using will be listed in the description box below, so be sure to check that out if you want to recreate this design or just know what I'm using for this cup. As always, if you have any questions or if you need anything, feel free to leave a comment down below, or you can send me a message on Instagram at Made by Manny and Mal. I think that's it. Let's go.
We're starting with a fully prepped and painted 14-ounce camper mug. I painted this using flat black from Rustoleum, and now I'm going to apply a very, very thin coat of epoxy so that we can apply our glitter. So I'm taking about 1 to 2 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy, just spreading this all over my cup, making sure that my coat is even and thin as can be. Make sure you get your handle really, really well coated, and then once the epoxy is applied, I'm going to set my cup aside so that this epoxy can level out, and I don't want any streaks or striping or anything like that in my epoxy because that will show through when we glitter. We're going to be creating a mega custom mix of glitter for this design, so I'm just going to take a bunch of different colors and mix them all together in one cup, and that will be our glitter. So I'm taking Apparition first, and then I took Ichabod, both from PDB, poured a little bit into this big cup, and then I'm taking Jack, which is literally my favorite Halloween color. I'm using it so much and I'm so sad it's discontinued. And then next we're going to take Envy, which is a really pretty dimensional dark green. So for this mix, we're taking some grays, blacks, greens, purples, and oranges to make a really dimensional and fun Halloween mix. So what I just put in was Oscar from Peachy Olive Glitters, and now I'm taking Nacho, also from Peachy Olive Glitters. These are both really chunky, lime greens. And then I'm going to take Spellbound from PDB. This is also another favorite Halloween color. So, so pretty. And then I'm taking Sirius, which is a super fine purple. And then I'm going to grab Batman from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is just a straight black. I just wanted to make this a little bit darker and make sure that we had a dark kind of undertone throughout this whole thing. Then I'm taking Atomic Black, which is a holographic kind of lighter black from Glitter Craze. Then Slytherin from Peachy Olive Glitters, throwing a little bit of that in there. So as you can see, I'm just taking a bunch of colors that I have in this same kind of color story: black, orange, gray, purple, green, and just throwing them all in this cup and mixing it together until I like what I see. If you only have a few colors, mix a few colors together and it will be totally fine. I have all these colors and I figured, why not use them, right? So here's what my mix looks like. It has so much going on and it is so cool to look at. So I just wanted to kind of spread it out and show you before we put it on the cup how sparkly and interesting this is. I am loving it. So I'm going to now take my cup that has been sitting aside for a little bit and just throw this glitter on there. We're going to do one coat, just make sure we have really, really good coverage, and we'll be good to go. So here's what it looks like on the cup. Really, how interesting and dimensional is that? Holy cow, I love it. I did 2 coats of epoxy on this cup, and now I'm ready to do all my sanding. Each coat of epoxy was about 20-ish milliliters of a little extra ink. So once that second coat was cured, I took my X-Acto knife and I just ran it along that top rim of my cup to get all the extra epoxy off there. And then I'm going to take a 60 grit sanding block and sand down my rim really well so we can expose that thin line of stainless steel. Now I'm using a really, really rough grit because I have a ton of epoxy on this cup and I know I'm not going to touch my glitter. If you don't have a lot of epoxy on your cup and you're worried about sanding down to your glitter, use a finer grit or do another coat of epoxy. That will also help smooth out your cup. So just be wary. I know that I'm not going to touch any glitter here, so I'm using a really rough grit to make sure that I can get this as smooth as can be. As you can see, I did a ton of sanding. I've got a lot of dust going on. So I'm going to wash all of that off with some dish soap and water, and we will be ready to apply our decal. I'm using a decal or SVG that I purchased from Diamonds and Dust Shop on Etsy. I will have that linked down below. It comes with the offset, which is so perfect. I cut that offset out of Oracal 651, just regular lime green vinyl, and I'm going to apply that to my cup first using the hinge method. Now, we're going to put some glow-in-the-dark bright drips on this cup, so I'm positioning my decal down towards the bottom because I don't want the drips to hang over my decal too much. So using the hinge method, taking this down to the bottom of the cup, applying that first, and then we're going to apply the regular decal over that. I cut the regular decal out of this beautiful holographic like gunmetal Tech Wrap Craft chrome vinyl. I will also have that linked in the description. I just got this color and I've been obsessed with it. It's so pretty. So I'm going to apply this the way I always do. I'm going to cut my top decal out into smaller pieces so I can ensure that I apply it as evenly as I can. It's just a lot less pressure to have to apply little pieces of a decal versus the entire thing and get it lined up perfectly all in one shot. So I like to break it up into smaller little batches. I'm going to seal this decal in with a coat of epoxy, and once that cures, I'm ready to apply our drip. So I've got about 30 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy, and I've let this epoxy sit aside for about 15-ish minutes so it can thicken up a little bit. And now I'm ready to add all of my colorants. So I've got Area 51 from PDB, which is a glow-in-the-dark pigment powder, this Martha Stewart lime paint that I'm going to add to give a little bit of bright color, and then I've also got this neon yellow pigment powder from PDB as well. So I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of that in there to make sure that this really pops. So just a tiny bit of each one into my epoxy. I'm going to mix that together really, really well. Make sure that we don't have any little pockets of that pigment powder left. And then I'm going to take Nice and Thick from Counterculture DIY to help thicken this epoxy up even more. And you just want to add a little bit of this at a time. You don't want to overwhelm with all your powder basically. So just add a little bit, mix it together, and then add a little bit more until it's at a consistency that you like. Letting your epoxy sit aside for a little while will help it kind of naturally thicken up on its own, so you won't have to use as much of this Nice and Thick. I don't want my drips to travel too much on my cup, so I made sure that my epoxy was thick enough that it would move maybe a little bit, but I really don't want it to travel up over my decal especially, so I made this pretty thick, THICC thick. So I'm just taking a little bit of this epoxy on my stir stick and I'm kind of just pushing it down against the rim to get that drip formation, and then I'm working it a little bit down, kind of creating the drips myself because I made this so thick that it's not really going to drip down naturally. So I'm kind of sculpting my drips the way I want them to go, making sure that I get all the way around my handle so that it looks like this Witch's Brew is really bubbling over this big cauldron mug. So just going to continue this around the entire rim of the mug. On the back end where our decal is not, I'm taking this epoxy much further down the mug and then keeping it kind of up towards the rim around our decal area. So just being really careful on the side that has our decal on it and then going a little bit wild on the other side. Once I had all my drips applied, I just sat it down like normal side up, not upside down, because I didn't want my epoxy to move the other way up towards the rim of the cup. And because this was so thick, I wasn't super worried about it dripping too far down, so I didn't really babysit it too much. If you make your epoxy a little bit thinner, you might want to check on it every 20-ish minutes just to make sure that it's not dripping too far down. So once the epoxy was all cured and dry, I'm going to apply another coat on top of that on my turner, and I'm taking a little bit of Moon Dust pigment powder from PDB and adding it to a little bit of epoxy, and we're going to put this on top of our drips, just our drips, not the rest of the cup, to give it a little bit of a sheen and make it look a little bit more like whimsical and magical, because it's supposed to be Witch's Brew after all, right? So just mixing this together, making sure that it's not too opaque that it's going to like overtake our design, but we do want it to show up on our cup. So with my cup on my turner, I'm going to very carefully just apply this Moondust pigment to the drips only, and then just a regular coat of epoxy to the rest of my cup. Once this coat of epoxy was all cured, I did another round of rim cleanup. So I took my X-Acto knife again and cut off any of the excess drip epoxy that got up over our rim, because we do still want to establish a good seal of epoxy even though we've got our drips up here. So I'm going to very carefully take my knife and just trim off any of the epoxy that's up over my rim, and then I'm going to take my sanding block again and just sand it down a little bit. We don't want to ruin the look of our drips, but we also want to establish a good seal. So it's very important to clean up your rim and make sure that you have a good seal up there so you can avoid any problems down the road. Once I was done with all my sanding, I washed my cup with some dish soap and water and applied my final coat of epoxy over the entire cup. And once that cured, we were all done. So that is it for this tutorial, you guys. This was so much fun to make, and I am totally getting into the Halloween spirit now. It's August 1st, which means it's Halloween in my book. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. I can't wait to see what you create with your drips in your custom glitter mixes and everything. So be sure to tag me in your photos at Made by Manny and Mal on Instagram and Facebook. And also don't forget to join our Facebook group, MBMM Makers Community. It is linked in the description box below. We've got a lot of fun going on in that group, so be sure to join if you want to be a part of that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and I am so thankful for all of you. Please be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for new videos every Tuesday and Saturday, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, love you. Bye.